All right, we are here for the ASN ranking show for Class 3A this week, week number 5. Um, a lot of big things happening in conference play in the first week, um, and a lot of really exciting things to talk about. Class 3A seems to be pretty strong, um, and a lot of really talented teams in this class. Not a whole lot has changed in the top 10 from last week to this week, but a lot of really exciting players and teams to get to talk about today. First, if you are not already, subscribe right here on YouTube to the Arkansas Sports Network and follow us on X, Facebook, and Instagram. We are all over the place on social media. So go ahead, go follow us on all those platforms if you have them. We're bringing you high school content, football season, basketball season, baseball. Um, we do all kinds of stuff around the state for those sports. So go ahead and follow us on those platforms to stay up to date on all of the things happening in Arkansas high school sports, or if you are a fan of the Arkansas Razorbacks. Without further ado, let's get into the rankings here for Class 3A. At number 1, the Prescott Curly Wolves. They were our game of the week this week as they took on Falk. That game started out looking kind of close, and then Prescott pulled away later in the game. They looked pretty dominant. Had a little bit of a hiccup playing Salem earlier in the year at Hendrix College. Um, but other than that, they've looked like a pretty dominant team, and a really exciting team too. Really athletic, really explosive. That's why they remain at our number 1 spot. Number 2, the Booneville Bearcats, another undefeated team. Um, they've played a lot of tough competition. They played Pateau from Oklahoma um, in their first game, and played Ozark, who's a class up in Class 4A, and they're looking to keep their state title to themselves, defend their state title after making a run last season. Our top 2 teams were the 2 teams in the state title game last season, um, and this season looks like it could end up that way again. But a couple of these teams in the top 10 have something to say about it, like the Rivercrest Colts, who themselves were playing in the state title game in December last season in Class 4A against Harding Academy. They have now moved down to Class 3A, and they've looked just as impressive. Coach Fleming doing a terrific job getting his group together. Of course, Jaden Young has been fantastic. Their quarterback, Washington, has been fantastic as well. They've got a really solid team, and they are going to be one to look out for sure, to make a run to Little Rock this season. Number 4, Newport, maybe the most dominant team in Class 3A. They've had some really solid wins. They beat Mark Tree. They beat Batesville. Um, they've really looked like one of the most talented teams in the class. Um, and so that's why we have them at that number 4 spot. Keandre Baker and that rushing attack is pretty near unstoppable. Um, and they know how to play. They can they'll just run the ball over and over and make you stop it. And they've got a pretty solid passing game as well. So that's why Newport is at that spot. Number 5, the Fordyce Red Bucks. I think people sometimes forget that this team came within a point of state runner-up Prescott in the playoffs last season. I believe the score was 6-7 in that playoff game. And Teran Miller, who does a lot of stuff with us, been around ASN. I'm sure you've seen him if you've been following us for a while. He has been high on Fordyce since we did our preview videos in the off season for the classes. Um, and so that they've really proved him right. They've been really dominant. Um, Cadillac Ellison is a freshman quarterback. He's one of the most talented freshman quarterbacks I've seen in a while. He's got great arm talent. He's pretty mobile. Can read a defense really well. Um, And then Brendan Simmons at linebackers, fantastic. Um, and they've just got so many good pieces at that program every year, such history at that program. They're always a tough out in the playoffs every season. Number six, the Bismarck Lions. This is a team that returned a lot of production from last season. Of course, that's what you're going to hear if you talk to anybody about Bismarck, is how much production they returned from their team that won 11 games last season. Um, and they look the part. Ben Keithley is one of the most, if not the most talented quarterback in the class. He puts up great numbers every week. They've looked dominant. Big wins over teams like Glen Rose and Mineral Springs, to name a couple. Um, and they've really proved that they belong in the top 10 this season, and that last season was no fluke under head coach DJ Keithley. Number seven, the Walnut Ridge Bobcats and coach Jeff Blake. Um, they have a really talented group over there. They have wins over teams like Earl and East Poinsett County, that I can name off the top of my head from Class 2A. Um, and we really hyped them up a lot in the offseason, and they've looked the part, really. They've been pretty tremendous. Um, and, Enrique Perez is a really talented running back for them. They run the ball really well. That's what they want to do. Um, and they've come out and they've looked like one of the top 10 teams in the class. Haven't disappointed anybody, and so that's why we have them at that spot. Number eight, Mayflower, Coach Austin Emerson. I talked to him in the off season. Um, he kind of expected his team to be in this spot. They have had a lot of success. They've played a couple of teams from Class 2A that they took to school, and I believe it was England and Bigelow is who they've played. They beat the defending 2A state champion Bigelow Panthers 35-0. That shows you what kind of talent they have, to mercy rule the defending state champions in that class. Um, and they've got all the qualities of a fantastic football team. They're physical, they're tough. Um, some really good athletes inside and out, line of scrimmage, and then on the outside as well. Um, they're just a really talented football team, and it's hard to pick against them in any given week because they play in a conference where it looks like they could have the edge every week. Um, and so um, really talented program. They might be a team if they continue to roll that'll move in to our top five or even higher than that. And I know Coach Emerson's going to have that group prepared every week. Number nine, the Ryzen Wildcats. Ryzen is a storied program. They are a very physical group every year. I'm really excited to watch their rivalry game against Fordyce, when the time comes. Um, I believe that's going to be closer to the end of the season, but I could be mistaken. But they have such a fantastic history at that school, um, and they're rolling. They beat Harmony Grove, Washita County, um, earlier this season. That was a big win for them. Harmony Grove, Washita County is a talented team. Um, and they look like they're ready to roll. They look like they have come into this season with their new head coach, and they lost Coach Caleb Carmichael to Heber Springs in the off season, where he took the head coaching job, and they picked up the coach from Star City, whose name escapes me at the moment. Um, but they looked really talented, and that new head coach seems to have given them some energy. Number 10, Salem. They're a team that's played a tough schedule so far. Of course, playing Prescott's hard every year. Um, but we still think that this team has a great offense, really talented and explosive team, and they remain in our top 10 for that reason. So, going to get into the games now, the picks and such. Should be a really fun week in Class 3A. Um, got a lot of really talented matchups, really talented teams. All right, now for our picks for the games this week. A lot of really exciting ball games happening with a lot of talented teams. We're going to start with Walnut Ridge and Osceola. Walnut Ridge 4-0. Osceola has not had a bad season either. Um, So you got to be looking at this matchup as one that could define the season really early for both of these teams. I am going to pick Walnut Ridge to get the victory in this one. I think that they are a top 10 team in the class, and I think that they're going to be prepared to go into that game and get a victory. It should be a really fun game. Manila and Hoxie. Manila is a team that's 0-4 this season, has struggled. Hoxie, usually a pretty good program, but they've struggled. They're off to a 1-3 start this season. I think they get back where they want to be, closer to where they want to be at least, and they get a win over Manila at home this week. Fordyce and Drew Central. Big talent gap between these two teams. Drew Central has struggled at 0-4. Fordyce has dominated at 4-0. They have Fordyce is just such an athletic and explosive team that it's hard to pick against them. So I'm going to go with the Red Bugs to start their season 5-0 and get the victory. Greenland versus Cedarville. Uh, Greenland, I talked about him on the show last week. Sladen Norwood, he's a guy that's putting up numbers every week. Greenland lost, I believe, to Osceola last week, if I'm not mistaken. And they're a program that every year they look pretty good. At over at Osceola, they're a little bit down to what they usually are, I think, this year, but they're still a pretty good program. Um, Greenland and Cedarville, I'm going to have to pick Greenland in this one because I think that offense is still explosive. They put up 42 points, Greenland did, in their loss last week, and Cedarville has struggled to get anything off the ground. So I'm going to pick Greenland to get the victory on the road. McGee versus Lakeside. Um, this is, McGee's just got so much history um, at their program. Um, you know, you it's hard to pick against them, on given any given week. Um, so I'm gonna have to go with McGee in this one. Um, it's a it's gonna be probably gonna be a tough game uh, for Lakeside. I really think that it's gonna be a really really good showing for McGee here early in conference play. I'm gonna give the Owls a victory. One thing about McGee, they looked really good in their game against DeWitt. So they look like they're getting better every week. That's why I say it might be a really good showing for McGee this week, better than what we're used to. Um, Moving on to Atkins versus Mountain View. Mountain View 2-2, Atkins 3-1. I've gotten to see that Red Devils team play in person. They are much improved. They're probably one of the most improved teams in the state from where they were the past couple seasons. 3-1 to start the season. Coach Dobbs has done a fantastic job getting that program back to where it's been historically, at a high level. I'm going to pick Atkins to get the victory and move to 4-1 to start their season. Mayflower and Yellville Summit. Mayflower is just so talented this season. They moved down from 4A to 3A. That's helped them a lot. I'm going to pick Mayflower to win big in this game. Melbourne versus Quitman. Uh, Quitman's a tough place to play. I played there when I was in high school. Been to a lot of games there. Um, it's a tough place to play. That might affect Melbourne a little bit, but I still think they're going to get the victory and win big in this game. West Fork versus Lavaca. Um, this is a game that uh, I think West Fork, they're a program that's struggling a little bit right now. I think that um, Lavaca is a team that's usually pretty good. Um, Lavaca's 2-2; they're 500 right now. They've just had a better start to their season than West Fork has. For that reason, I'm going to give Lavaca the victory. Plus, it's at Lavaca. That's definitely going to help. Um, it's just a game where it's hard to pick against Lavaca because of the difference in the wins and losses so far for those two teams. Prescott versus Horatio. Prescott, I don't think I need to go too in depth on this one. Prescott is going to win this one big. They've got such a talented and athletic roster and such a talented and athletic team. Year in and year out, Coach Glass has done a pretty good job there, building that program and keeping it on course. So I'm going to pick Prescott to get the victory in this game. Glen Rose versus Magnet Cove, two teams that are in that Malvern area. Um, that's, I believe, south of Little Rock. Glen Rose is a team that had a fantastic year last year. They lost a lot of production, and they are having to play a lot of young players. Magnet Cove is a team that's 500. Lost to Jessieville last week by 7. I'm going to pick Magnet Cove in a close game here only because the game is at Magnet Cove. I think Glen Rose is going to get better every week because of how young their team is and how inexperienced they are. Got their first win of the season last week against Two Rivers, 35-7. Um, but I'm going to pick Magnet Cove to get a win in a close game here. Pretty physical ball game. But I'm going to pick Magnet Cove because it's at Magnet Cove. Harmony Grove, Washita County versus Falk. Falk 3-1, Harmony Grove, Washita County 2-2. I've been pretty impressed with what Harmony Grove, Washita County has been able to do, even though they're 500 this season. But I've been impressed with Falk too. They came out and they lost to a team they were supposed to lose to. They've won the games they were supposed to win. So, to me, this game being at Falk, it is hard to pick against them, but I'm going to. I'm going to pick Harmony Grove, Washita County to get the win in this game. Might be an upset for some people, but to me, I think Harmony Grove, Washita County is a very, very talented team, and I think that their 2-2 record doesn't reflect how good they are. So I'm going to pick them to get the victory in this game. Episcopal versus Salem. This is a tough game for Episcopal. It's at Salem. That doesn't help. Episcopal's 0-4. I think Coach Fortner is going to get that program where he wants it sooner rather than later. They've got fantastic facilities there to work with, but I'm going to pick Salem to win in this game because this season Salem is the much better team than Episcopal. Dumas versus Risen. Risen 3-0. It's hard to pick against them, so I'm going to go with Risen to win in this game. They've looked pretty sharp in the first few weeks of football, and so I'm going to pick Risen to get the conference win. Paris versus Cutter Morning Star. Cutter Morning Star is a team that is moving up from 8-man to 11-man football this season in Class 3A. For a long time, they were a part of Class 2A, but they're in 3A this season. Paris is 500 right now. Cutter has not won a game yet. The game's at Cutter. I think that will help the Eagles, but I'm going to pick Paris to get the victory in this game. Mansfield versus Charleston. This is going to be a fantastic ball game. Both teams have started the season 500. I don't think that reflects how good they are. They're both fantastic programs. Coach Overton has taken that Mansfield team to new heights, and Coach Ricky May at Charleston is a fantastic coach at a fantastic program. Um, I'm going to pick Charleston to get the victory just because the game is at Charleston. Going to be a close game. I think it could easily go either way. But I'm going to pick Charleston to get the victory in a close ball game that could come down to the last 2 minutes. Center Point versus Parker's Chapel. Center Point 4-0. Parker's Chapel 1-3. Parker's Chapel has struggled this season so far, so I'm going to pick Center Point to get the victory. It's at Parker's Chapel. That might help them a little bit, but Center Point will move to 5-0 and stay undefeated this week. Boonville versus Hackett. It's at Hackett. Boonville, undefeated defending state champions. Hard to pick against them. So I'm going to pick the Boonville Bearcats to get the victory over Hackett. Hackett's 2-2. They're 500. I know they beat Mountainburg earlier in the season by a pretty dominant score. I'm going to pick Boonville, though, to get the victory in this game over Hackett on the road. Bismarck versus Smackover. Bismarck another one of these games where it's hard to pick against them. They're in our top 10 for a reason. Uh, you might have them higher than we do if you're into rankings. Um, and they're just such a talented program. It's hard to bet against them after what they did last season. I'm going to pick them to get the victory over Smackover. I think that Smackover is a talented team. I know they lost to Junction City 17-15 a couple weeks ago, but that offense still has some explosive playmakers and some explosive playability. I think it's going to be closer than people might think, but I do think that Bismarck will win in a shootout. Jessieville and Two Rivers. I think it's a pretty easy pick here. Two Rivers has not been on their game for the past few years. Um, and Jessieville has played some tough competition. I know they played Mount Ida and they played Magnet Cove, some teams like that. Um, I'm gonna pick Jessieville to get the victory in this game in deciding fashion. Rivercrest versus Newport. This might be the Class 3A game of the week. Both teams 4-0. Newport, fantastic at running the football. Um, Rivercrest, defending runner-up in their class from last season, and they come down a level, and they're dominating. But so is Newport. This, I think, will be one of, if not the closest games in the entire state this week. It's going to come down to the wire. I give Newport the edge because it's at Newport. We have them ranked 3 and 4, but I give the edge to Newport because the game is at Newport. Harrisburg versus Piggott. Both teams 0-4 have struggled to start the season. Um, I'm going to pick Harrisburg to get the victory in this game in what could be a defensive battle. Palestine Wheatley versus Barton. Coach Pascal at Palestine Wheatley, Coach Tyler Pascal has improved that team from what they've been from the last few years. Um, Barton is a team that I know, I believe at least, lost to Earl, but both of these teams have wins over Clarendon. Um, I'm going to pick Barton to get the win because it's at Barton. That's such a storied program too. And Coach Sexton is doing a pretty good job with that program. I'm going to pick Barton to get the victory in this game. Finally, Perryville versus Danville. Perryville 3-1 to start the season. Only loss was to Atkins. Um, Coach Fairbanks does a fantastic job at Perryville. Coach Crane is he's putting in work, bringing back that Danville squad to where it was whenever he was the head coach in his first stint. Was an assistant at Bentonville, I believe, for a while, and he's just he that team is looking like they're improving every week with their new head coach. Um, we heard all offseason that Danville team was going to be improved, and they're going to improve every week with Coach Crane at the helm. Um, and I would agree with that sentiment, but I don't think they're going to have enough to get past Perryville this week. Perryville will win in that game on the road. Well, that's going to do it for our Class 3A rankings show for the week. I'm Carson Ward from the Arkansas Sports Network. Don't forget to follow us on X, Instagram, and Facebook, and go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube channel right here. Don't forget to like the video as well if you haven't already. We'll be back for Class 4A and above before things get rolling on Friday night. But for now, Carson Ward signing off.